Okay, I am Pushan Sharma. I am from IIT Delhi. I am working on low calorific value gases, the flame structure, flame stability like this. I am working under Professor Anjan Ray. Here I am using a co-flow burner like this, using methane as a fuel, like 5% to 20%, varying it, nitrogen rest of it, and now oxidizer side, it is oxygen and nitrogen mixture. I am varying it by volume. Now I am doing a lot of things, experimental, some simulations, but the thing that I am focusing on is the lift off height. So the experimental lift off height that I have got is almost in the sub-millimeter ranges. So that is something we are really concerned about. So we went to simulation and we have seen, we are focused on that HO2 species concentration. Some cases I have seen that HO2 concentration is exactly at the burner rim. On the some cases, some few cases, HO2 concentration is a little bit downstream of the burner rim. So in those cases where it is a little bit downstream, I can say that yes, it is lift off, it is not dead space. So I have to distinguish between dead space and lift off height, because I am getting the lift off height in sub-millimeter ranges. So where HO2 species is almost at the burner rim, I can say that yes, it is dead space, and where it is a little bit downstream, I can say yes, it is lift off height. So that's how I am distinguishing it. So according to Bennett, T account 1000 Kelvin line is the lift off height parameter that he is taking. So when I am comparing with the HO2 data, it is almost matching. Like if you can see here, the HO2 concentration is higher at this position, and 1000 Kelvin line also going around this, and the other values also showing that. So T equals to 1000 Kelvin can be a good parameter for measuring lift off height at this region. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Samim, and my project is the Enabling Radiant Heat Flux Gauge. So Worcester Polytechnical, where I'm from, we focus a lot on fire protection, not on internal combustion. And for the fire protection application, optical fire detection for fire protection purposes or for R&D purposes is what we're looking at. Now, to give you an idea, the reason it's called the Enabling Radiant Heat Flux Gauge is because right now the kind of gauges that we can use for measuring just optical radiant heat flux are $2,000 to $5,000 US per unit. And because they're optical, you need multiples of them at different angles to capture information. And very quickly then you realize that the cost exceeds the asset value that you're trying to protect, or it becomes very infeasible for most applications. And as a result, it's not used in places, commercial applications or residential applications, and it's very often just limited to very high value assets such as industrial applications. So we are using a fundamentally different sensing technology which allows us to create sensors that are $10 or $100 USD, an order or two of magnitude cheaper. And as a result, it enables a lot of applications, enables a lot of other products that just wouldn't be cost effective beforehand. So the way we're doing this is we're actually looking at the soot emissions inside of a fire. Another thing that's different from internal combustion is the chemiluminescence or the photoluminescence emissions from a fire that are fuel dependent can't really be used very well here because we don't know what's burning in a lot of cases, or it's multi-component burning, and it's very hard to figure out what proportions are happening here. However, soot is common to all fuels that are burning, all hydrocarbon fuels that are burning. So we focus on this black body emissions that come from this soot, and we are developing or validating a prototype model and a sensor model that exists off the shelf to determine exactly how feasible this application is. So we have a prototype and we have a theoretical model, and based on those two we throw them through an experimental platform, and we're determining whether or not the values converge. So our prototype is based on, like I said, an off-the-shelf sensor. It is proprietary. However, it has some very basic units. It has some stabilization, some gain, and it has very specific features of the sensor which are again tunable based on the manufactured device that you use. And then we have our theoretical model. So for our theoretical model, the black body emissions from soot, which are thermal radiation emissions that are mainly a function of temperature, are seen in the yellow region here. So in the yellow region, you have soot that's coming at a different rate of basically radial distribution, and that causes a certain emissivity or a certain proportion of light to come out. Now that can be shown here by this yellow curve, and this red curve is the spectral sensitivity of the sensor we have, and the intersect here, the green curve, is what we're trying to sense. So based on that, we have our theoretical model equation, which has inputs of temperature, soot volume fraction, and optical beam length, which is basically the thickness of the flame here. And our prototype had its own equation here. So basically we throw them through a co-flow ethylene burner. This paper is by Arana, It all but is very similar to the classical Santoro burner that is used. And basically you have fuel and air at a preset mixture in the center tube, and you have secondary air straightening the flame on the outer tube, and you can vary these proportions of fuel and air inside to get different flame lengths. These are the reported values shown here, from pure diffusion flame on the left-hand side all the way to almost stoichiometric flame on the right-hand side. And then over here are the results we get. So we get a very similar profile. We have our own temperature measurements, which are almost within the reported error band that the literature had. And as a result, we get these values. So the values show, this is the flame, and these purple circles are the actual measurement points inside the flame. And we see that the green, which is our measured value, and the yellow, which is the computed value, are on the same order of magnitude. So this is a work in progress, and there are some sources of error I'll get into, but basically we're seeing some level of agreement or some level of assurance of our first principles basic models that we've developed here, which is very promising. So there are some sources of error here. The sensors, because they're not specifically for this application, require a bit of, I guess, clarification or on disambiguation in terms of their specifications, which change our theoretical model. And then there's some other things as far as the limitations of the experiment. So we're moving on actually to a larger scale experiment here, which is a large scale turbulent flame used in ice cavities for crude oil combustion. And we're hoping to see better results there. Thank you.
So myself, Snehashish Pandey, I am from IIT Guwahati. So this topic is analysis of oxygen-enriched air combustion of methane in a porous radiant burner. So this is basically the radiant burner, which consists of one preheating zone and combustion zone. So this preheating zone is consists of alumina balls, and this combustion zone is consists of silicon carbide matrix. So this pre-mixed air-fuel mixture will come through this bottom surface, and the combustion will take place at the intersection of this both zones. So what is happening here? This is the axial temperature profile with with axial distance. So what is happening here? At the intersection, combustion is taking place. So the peak temperature you can see is at the intersection the peak temperature is high, and as the combustion product moves through this downstream section, the gaseous convective heat transfer will take place from gaseous to solid part. So this gaseous temperature is decreasing here, and at the same time solid temperature increases, and some of this heat is then conducted and radiated back to upstream section, so which will preheat the incoming air fuel mixture, and due to this preheating, the combustion efficiency and CO emission can be reduced. So this is the comparison between free flame combustion and porous radiant burner. So this is the combustion zone. So here you can see that this CO mole fraction is less as compared to free flame combustion, and this carbon monoxide is oxidized to carbon dioxide due to higher residence time. So this is the main advantage of porous radiant burner as compared to free flame combustion. So here the present case requires the coupled equation of continuity equation, energy equations, and the species mass concentration equation. And as the radiation heat transfer is taking place in the solid matrix, so RT equation, that is radiation transfer equation, is also we need to solve it. So this is the typical RT equation, and that I had to couple it with these 4 coupled equations. So these are the burner specifications. The material is silicon carbide, the PPC, porosity, and the pore diameter, all the things are given here. And the main advantage of this is by increasing the oxygen concentration in the oxidizer, we can increase the radiative output, and at the same time NOx emission can be reduced, and at the same time maximum temperature can be increased, and at the same time we can capture more amount of carbon dioxide, so that it can be applicable to both domestic and industrial applications.
Hi, I am Gopakumara. I am from Department of Aerospace Engineering, Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, working with Professor Swetha Prabhu Chaudhary. Here we are trying to mitigate thermoacoustic oscillations by rotating the swirler. What happens is that the swirler rotation enhances the swirl number and turbulence intensity, and hence the turbulent flame speed. So this causes the flame to assume a new position and shape statistically. So through the controlled variation of swirler rotation, flame can be forced into a thermoacoustically stable location where this flame and acoustics can be decoupled. So recent and previous studies have shown that this flame shape and location are two important parameters that determines whether a flame combustor configuration is thermoacoustically stable or not. So this is our experimental setup. We have the combustor here, and we have a shaft going centrally through this one, supported on 2 bearings, and the swirler is mounted at this point. We use 99% pure methane as a fuel. So premixed methane and air are premixed to a molecular level in a premixer and sent in through these 4 intake ports. And this is our test section. So this figure C shows variation of flame shape and location with respect to swirler RPM. Figure 1 corresponds to 0 RPM, then 1000, 1400 and 1800 RPM. So you can clearly see how the flame shape and location varies with RPM. And this is our results. So we have taken time series data of thermoacoustic oscillations, time series data from these microphone signals. So FFT of the time series data shows a prominent mode at 75 Hz, which corresponds to the L/4 mode of the combustor. These two figures, figure 1 shows 0 RPM case and figure 2 is 1800 RPM case. So when swirler rotates to 1800 RPM, you can see a clear reduction in amplitude of the first mode of longitudinal oscillations, while other modes are slightly increasing. Since our interest is on first mode, so we can see there is around 20 decibel reduction in first mode. And on conclusions, you can see how this reduction is going on. Mode 1 is reducing significantly, but there is a slight increase in mode 2 and mode 3. And this figure shows line of sight integrated chemiluminescence data. From this one, you can see your intensity, flame intensity is reduced.
Very good morning to one and all presenting here. I am D. Sakturel, teaching faculty of Anna University, and my guide is Dr. S. Nian. He is a senior professor of Anna University, and our topic is design and performance evaluation of the newly introduced cook stove, I mean with the optimum air injection. So why we have chosen this particular biomass cook stove is that all over the world 1.5 billion of people are not able are assessing the biomass cook stove for cooking applications, and also biomass is a predominant source which is available all around the world. So that we have selected this particular gasification system for cooking applications, and primarily we have taken some 3 different sets of fuel cook stoves which is available in the MNRE websites, because there are 3 different types of classifications of the gasified stoves. One is updraft, downdraft and crossdraft stoves, and here there are 2 different type of stoves, Urja Plus and Terry stove. These are the updraft cook stoves, and another one is a Urja Plus who is a crossdraft stove, and the efficiency of the stove should be more than 35%. So that we have taken 3 different sets of cook stoves for the experiment, and we have introduced our stove based upon the mathematical correlations. And after that we have there are two air injections. One is a primary and secondary. We have modified the secondary air injection for the complete combustion of the cook stove during the char mode, because there are 2 different modes. One is a flaming mode, another one is a char mode. First, our Dr. S. Varun Kumar of IIT Madras, he has conducted an experiment in the Urja Plus stoves that was mainly based on the cross-draft stove. He has conducted experiments and predict the results based upon the carbon monoxide and particulate emissions, which dictates that the carbon monoxide in particular will be during char mode, which will be very high. So that we have taken 4 different sets of angle of inclination of the secondary air, which will be used for the complete combustion of the secondary air. So based upon the computational fluid dynamics, we have predicted that the 45-degree of angle of injection in the secondary air, which will be used to very much contributing towards the complete combustion of the char mode. So the result shows that the secondary air, the pre-air mixing during the between the primary and secondary will be very high for the 45-degree of angle of injections. So the results concluded that there are 34 and 35% of the efficiency what got for the Terry cook stove, and Terry which is which is available at market at higher efficiency, about 37%. But this newly introduced stove, which is mainly contributing the higher efficiency than the existing Terry stove, and also without affecting the specific fuel consumption. That's all. Thank you.
I am Balaji from KCT. I do research in the field of introducing HHO gas into SI engine. Here what I am doing is constructing a hydrolysis setup by which I can introduce HHO gas into engine. This is a setup that produces HHO gas, which is known as Brown's gas. It is a monatomic molecule that is injected into engine. Here is an arrangement by which I am introducing HHO gas into intake manifold of the engine. It has 2 phases. electrolysis and electrolysis arrangement, and the other thing is that engine arrangement. Here electrolysis arrangement is like I have a metal that doesn't corrode by passing direct current, and I have other part is like what is the capacity of the say for a box that contains water, and I'm introducing producing HHO gas and introducing it into engine through flow controllers and ratio controllers, by which I'm analyzing the flame propagation time and surface travel time of flame.
So we are looking at the effect of partial premixing. Okay. Hello, I am Aritra. I am a doctoral student here, and we are looking at the effect of partial premixing on the formation of soot. So we look at ethylene air flames, and we use a co-flow burner. So we have air in the outer annular region and fuel in the inner, and we vary the premixedness parameters in here. So we have fuel rich mixtures coming through the core and fuel lean mixtures coming through the outer streams, and we vary this over a wide range of premixedness. So we also impose shear on this, as in we have a flow velocity difference of 2 meters per second in the inner and the outer, and along with partial premixing, that is I have amount of fuel in the outer. So we found that the amount of soot volume fraction that is found, we found that through the laser extinction technique. We found that the fuel volume fraction drastically drops, beyond a particular fuel percentage with shear and partial premixing, which is totally absent in the rich case or the partially premixed case without shear. So these are the additional results that we found from simultaneous LII and pH LIF measurements, and even that supports the same as we see, and these are just some instantaneous images that we have found. So we we can say with certainty that partial premixing and shear kind of mitigates the formation of soot. So we are trying to apply this in gas turbines and look at low emission engines and such.
Good afternoon, I am Abhijit Dhamnekar from IIT Madras, and my study of flame impingement I am doing, and here we are just basic preliminary results of my jet impingement I am showing. We used fuels and air supply, pressure regulator and flow measurement, rotameter, burner impinging plate, and this study is for even for a kitchen, you can use for the utensils and all those things. We have to find where the maximum temperature when the flame and the plate is there. So we carried out the study for the different H/D ratios, and we found that whenever we keep the plate, it is in the above the potential core region, we'll get the maximum temperature somewhere like 11 to 16 degrees, and the same time you done the image processing for the different flames, we found that the frequency of that one is the maximum. So this makes the maximum frequency at this the flame oscillates more maximum, and at the same time the temperature is the maximum. When you go further above of the 21, you will get the stable flames, and that time the temperature starts decreasing. So it is necessary to find for different fuel ratios and different fuels which is the maximum, but it can be concluded from this then it should be above the potential core region, because when you keep within the potential core region also the flame complete flame structures is varying. So we have to study for the further different cases for different fuel ratios and different distances. Thank you.
I am Rahman Abdul Rahman Khan from IIT Delhi, and my topic is on laminar burning velocity and flame stability of compressed natural gas blended with hydrogen burning in air. So basically what is the idea that the CNG is a very, in the lean burn characteristics of the CNG is not very good. So we have blended hydrogen with the CNG to get the effect of on the laminar burning velocity and the flame stability of that particular flame. For this we have used a constant pressure outwardly propagating flame, and we have used two extrapolation methodology, linear stretch and the non-linear stretch, model for extrapolating the results of extrapolation result between the flame stretch and the stretch rate and the flame speed. So the basic idea is to show that for the both cases, when the Lewis number is less than 1 and the greater than 1, we have seen that
the linear extrapolation slightly overpredicts the laminar burning velocity, and this thing will be worsened if the Lewis number is greater than or very less than 1. So at the end I can say that as I have increased the blending percentage of the hydrogen, the laminar burning velocity has been increased and the peak has been shifted towards the higher laminar burning velocity, and the effect of the blending, we have seen that the effect of the blending is higher in case of rich mixtures compared to the lean mixtures. And in the lean mixture, because it is having the Lewis number less than 1, we can see that there are development of the cracks inside the visible window itself, and we can see that the laminar Marsden length is negative in case of higher hydrogen percentage in the fuel and in the CNG and the hydrogen blends. So that's it. So I want to say that if we were add the hydrogen more compared to the less amount of the hydrogen in the flame, the peak laminar burning velocity point will be shifted towards the higher rich fuel side, and the laminar burning velocity will be decreased, and the Marsden length will be slightly getting decreased, will decrease as compared to low hydrogen percentage. So the flame will be unstable for the preferential diffusion for higher percentage of the blend. So these are my conclusions.
Okay, my name is Mohammad Shahsawari. I'm a PhD candidate at Sharif University of Technology in Iran. We are working on lean premix low sugar combustion. This kind of combustion this kind of flow stabilizes the lean premix flame aerodynamically at the position where local flow velocity equals turbulent flame speed, and the NOx emission is very low. So we started our investigations to characterize the stability characteristics of low sugar flames. You see lifted flame, flashback, hysteresis, and lifted lean flame. Here, after that, we decided to excite the flame with acoustic waves externally. When we decided the flame, we saw that lifted bow-shaped flame becomes W-type under external excitation, but we didn't have the answer to this question. So we used numerical investigation, using large eddy simulations with different subgrid scale models and thickened flame combustion models. We saw that this is the numerical results. Lifted flame, coherent structures of non-reacting and reacting low swirl flow, and this is the flame brush. We saw that although swirl intensity is low enough, there is no stagnation point downstream of near the flame front, but we have a recirculation zone downstream of the flame front, which does not have any effects on the flame stabilization. When we excite the flame with numerical investigation, we saw that this recirculation zone become wider and creates such W-type flame. And I'm here as my sabbatical program to use OH chemiluminescence, PLIF and PIV to see if these numerical results are correct or not. Thank you.
Hi, I am Sanjeev Kumar from PhD research scholar from IIT Kanpur. My topic is multiple mapping conditioning for lifted flame in a vitiated co-flow, and this is relatively a new method for diffusion flames, MMC. It unifies both the methods CMC and PDF. CMC method and flamelet methods are applied to a mixture fraction based approaches, but in this we map the mixture fraction to a reference variable. In this we use only 20 particles per CFD cell. This is computationally cheaper, and we map the physical space with the reference space, so it ensures the localness in the composition space. We in this method we solve only a evolution equation for the reference variable, and as you see in this OH, the lifted height is very much compared with the experimental, and all the result mean and RMS are very well predicted, and conditional means are also very well predicted compared to the experimental. And this is a computationally cheaper. We used a mixing model, modified curl mixing model, and chemical kinetic used is ARM2 with 19 species and 15 reactions. We use a mixing model C5 is equal to 2, and in MMC we have a 2 time scale, major time scale and minor time scale. Major time scale control the fluctuation, major fluctuation, and minor time scale control the minor fluctuation. We fix the major constant C5 is equal to 2 and only control all the variable by minor fluctuation by T minor is equal to 0.5, and it gives a good result compared to the experimental.
Okay. My name is Aditya Karanam, and I am from Bhabha Atomic Research Center, and I'll just take a minute to explain the work that we have done at BARC. So this is actually the system level understanding of the overall problem. So here we have a nuclear reactor like a pressurized heavy water reactor, and there are two main components in this. So this is the core which produces the heat, and this is the containment which surrounds the core and isolates the ambient atmosphere from the reactor core. So the overall problem here is during accident scenarios, the water inside the core can start reacting with zircaloy, which is a cladding material, and produce hydrogen. Once hydrogen is produced, it can slowly leak into the containment, and over a period of 24 to 48 hours, substantial amount of hydrogen can form in the containment, which starts acting like a very highly explosive mixture. And if you see the real picture of a containment, it is a highly interconnected geometry, and it's a highly complex structure which is going on in that. So the main motivation of the project is to see what are the different modes of combustion of hydrogen that can occur, and what are the mechanisms for transition from one mode to the other mode. So to do that, we have done different types of analysis. So starting is basically this is a thermodynamic modeling using free energy minimization, and then we have done kinetic modeling, 0D kinetic modeling, and then we have done deflagration modeling, CFD modeling for deflagrations, and finally we have done the CFD modeling for transition from deflagration to detonation. So due to shortage of time, I will just go to the final result. So if you see here, we identified three important parameters which can be used, which are relevant to reactors. So the first thing is the hydrogen mole fraction, and second is the degree of obstruction, and third is the concentration. So as we know, hydrogen is lighter than air, so it will tend to stratify and form regions of higher concentration towards the top compared to the bottom. So these are the three parameters that we played with. And one of the important features here is that this is a plot of flame velocity versus flame position or flame distance. What we see is that initially the flame speed tends to rise, and at certain point it reaches the speed of sound with respect to the unburned gases, and after continued flame acceleration it reaches the speed of sound with respect to the products, at which point we see a very sharp increase in velocity, which can be captured as a transition from deflagration to detonation. To see what is exactly happening inside at the micro level, we saw the pressure traces at different points and tried to plot it overlaying with the flame line basically. So here what we see is that the point at which pressure spikes exactly occurs on the flame line, which means the shock front is moving like this, the flame front is moving like this, and at certain point both of them coalesce, and that's the point where we see a very sharp increase in pressure, which is the DDT. But in different scenarios where either the mole fraction is decreased or where the blockage is decreased, we see that this is the shock line which is running front and the flame line is running slowly. So the coalescence does not take place, and in that case DDT does not occur. So using the different analytical models, we are at a point where we can predict the transition from deflagration to detonation. So the next step of this project is to try to apply this kind of modeling to real geometries and try to characterize the different effects which can occur in that. And then the other objective is also to get more resolved models using finite rate chemistry and LES to capture the DDT effect. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I am Preeti Rekha Borgohai, a PhD student of IIT Guwahati. Right now I am in third year. I am working in the field of numerical simulation to carry out the calculation for the gaseous reacting flows using hybrid unstructured grids. So for this calculation we have developed our own code and we are using a low Mach number approximation where pressure can be split into two parts, like thermodynamic part and the hydrodynamic part. And we have assumed certain assumptions to simplify our equations and we are using the variable coefficient pressure person equation to get the hydrodynamic pressure field. And the source term coming in the pressure person equation we are calculating by using this expression, and the solver has already been developed for this low Mach number variable density formulation. To get the validation we have run the 3 test cases. Like first case checks the density variation only because of mixing, that means the isothermal mixing of two inert species. And the second problem checks the density variation problems by the combined effect of species variation as well as the temperature variation. And the third one is the reacting flows. In the first case it has been seen that there is a horizontal channel, two species non-reacting species are coming into the channel, and at steady state they will form a homogeneous mixture, and we have plotted the results with the at different at their locations, and we have got a quite good matching. That means our solver is capable of handling this type of problems. The second problem is the natural convection thermobaric flows with high temperature gradient. This is the hot wall, this is the cold wall, with the presence of two species. Like at steady state, the composition of these two species will be taken such that at steady state this will represent the composition of air. That means it is exactly the natural convection with air flowing inside the domain. So we have compared the results, the Nusselt number as well as the velocity profiles at the central edge, and we have got a good match. That means our solver can be handle the combined effect of both temperature variation as well as the concentration variation. And the third test case is the vertical channel with methane air diffusion flame. So for this we have using the flame sheet concept, and we have solved for the mixture fraction approach, and then from the mixture fraction approach we have find out the mass fractions of methane, carbon dioxide, that means that all the reactants as the products, and we have got a comparatively good results. And the further calculation for the future scope, we thought of implementing this code, the turbulent part as well as the finite rate chemistry part. Thank you.
My name is Harish, and my work is like experimental study of how initial fuel temperature influences the mass burning rate of kerosene fuels in cold environment. This may be helpful to clean up. This study may be helpful to clean up the oil spill in Arctic conditions. And this is the experimental setup. The experimental setup consists of a weighing machine which is of 0.1 gram accuracy, and above that we kept a wooden block to avoid the oil spill, and above that we kept the bowl in which we kept the fuel and ice. How we are manufacturing the ice is like we are taking a 79 mm outer diameter bowl, and we are pouring pure water into that, and in the middle of the bowl we are keeping the fuel container of the diameter which we want, and we are keeping in the freezer and making the ice. What are the parameters we are varying here is the fuel bowl diameter and the initial temperature of the fuel. So we are pouring the kerosene into the bowl, like the bowl diameters are varied between 30 and 49 mm. We are varying the initial temperature from 4 degrees to 16 degrees. How we are doing it is, when we take the fuel it is at atmospheric temperature, so we pour the fuel into the bowl and we start stirring it. Because of the ice it starts cooling down. When it reaches a particular temperature, suppose 4 degrees, we start igniting it, and we will pinch the flame after 5 minutes, and in between every 30 seconds we will take the mass of the fuel. See, these are the results, and it is initial temperature of the fuel versus time of ignition. We can clearly see that at 4 degrees of the fuel temperature, for 30 mm bowl it is taking 30 seconds, but for 49 mm bowl it is taking only 25 seconds. So there is a lot of difference in ignition temperature. As you increase the initial temperature of the fuel, there is a reduction in the difference between the ignition temperature between 30 mm bowl and 49 mm bowl is reducing, and they are almost same at 12 degrees. Then initial temperature of the fuel versus average mass burning rate. You can see that with increase in initial temperature of the fuel, there is a slight increase in mass burning rate. We can intuitively know that with 49 mm, for 49 mm bowl, there is a high mass burning rate. Then initial temperature of the fuel versus fuel temperature after quenching, that is slightly below the surface of the fuel. Like that is also increasing with increase in the initial temperature of the fuel. Conclusion is like when there is when the temperature of the fuel is high, if you burn it, it will burn quickly, and at those conditions, if you try to remove the oil from the oil spill, it will be better.
Good afternoon, my name is Umesh from IIT Bombay. So the title of the work is the stabilization of the lifted spray flame. So all of you know that the liquid fuel is used in almost all the combustor. So we carried out the effect of the various spray characteristics on the stabilization of the liquid spray flame. The initial work is based on the reacting work. We measure the lift off height in the range of 4 to 9 bar. So these are the results. In this, if you observe, your LOH increases linearly with the mass flow rate and the pressure. So what are the various, and your flame gets stabilized in the range of 20 to 35. So what are the various probable reasons to flame stabilization? We carried out the non-reacting work. So these are the work of shadowgraphy, and these are the work of the PIV. In the shadowgraphy, we measure the SMD distribution. We observe that in the range of 20 to 35, we got a smaller SMD distribution. So it's one of the reasons for the stabilization of the liquid spray flame. Apart from this, we carried out the PIV also to measure the velocity and the vorticity distribution. If you observe here, we got a high velocity region zone and the recirculation zone, and this black line indicates the stabilization of the liquid spray flame. So your flame gets stabilized at the end of the high velocity zone and at the end of the recirculation zone. Means not only the SMD distribution, but the velocity and VOT distribution also responsible for the stabilization of the liquid spray flame. Thank you very much.
I am Subhash Chandra. I am faculty member at NIT Jalandhar. So here in this poster, I am presenting the work on structure and stability of dual flame. So we have proposed a dual flame burner over here. So dual flame burner structure is like this. I am showing here the schematic of the same burner. So we have the outer flame as well as the inner flame. So the outer flame is supported by the inner flame. So we can give the swirl to outer flame. We have the swirl to outer swirling flame, and we can give the swirl to inner flame also. So the advantage of doing this getting this dual flame burner is that we can support the outer flame at very high flow rates and under very lean conditions. So here I am showing some of the pictures that we have taken directly for our different flames under different configurations. So we can see here that if both the flames are kept at stoichiometric conditions, the flames will look like this, and if we can make the inner and outer flame very lean, so we can have the shape of the flame like this. The inner flame will be longer than than if you can see the spikes of the outer flame. So in this particular figure, so I am trying to show the qualitatively with the help of wooden stick experiment the extent of recirculation zone. So we can easily see that when the wooden stick is inserted, then the carbon particles will follow the recirculation zone, and we can easily make out the extent of lower end of the recirculation zone if there is no inner flame, and if there is inner flame but it is not swirling, then if there is an inner flame but it is when it is swirling. We can clearly see from these qualitative pictures that the inner, you can say, lower part of the recirculation bubble is getting modified in the presence of the we can say inner flame. So here I am showing some of the pictures on the impinging flames, and again we can notice the modified recirculation zone in presence of inner flame. So these graphs are showing the benefit that we are getting by using the dual flame. We can easily notice that in the presence of the inner flame, the blowout limits will be extended towards linear side, and we can have very high flow rates possible for our dual flame. Thank you very much.
I am Amrit Vikram Sahu. I am a PhD student in Combustion and Spray Lab at ISC Bangalore from Mechanical Engineering Department. So my poster is about quantitative OH and temperature measurements in a counterflow diffusion flame for syngas air mixtures. So the background is we have very less amount of quantitative data for quantitative experimental data for various H2CO mixture diffusion flames, and we need to produce these experimental data to compare, validate different mechanisms that are available in the literature. So we have a counterflow diffusion flame burner where we can get very good laminar steady diffusion flames across a wide number of strain rate conditions. So we compare two different fuels with varying H2CO ratios and use Rayleigh thermometry and OH PLIF to gain non-intrusive quantitative temperature and OH concentration measurements. As you can see here, we have representative cases for temperature and OH PLIF signals, which have been quantified to get absolute data in absolute Kelvin or and ppm concentrations. On the right hand side, as you can see, we have compared the experimental data with various mechanisms, and we can see that some of the mechanisms do pretty well at low strain rate conditions but fail to do well at high strain rate conditions. Similar observations also we have found in OH measurements. Right now we are in the process of analyzing the results and understanding the trends of these predictions so that we can improve these mechanisms for future work. Thank you.
So my name is Priyanka Patti. I am a student at Pennsylvania State University, and our group focuses on studies of soot evolution and pH evolution. So the aim of the current study is to look at the unsteady effects of turbulence on pH evolution. So soot is known to have detrimental effects on the environment and human health, and polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, which are commonly known as pH, are precursors of soot. So it is important to study pH evolution in order to study soot formation. So soot pH formation is essentially governed by slow chemistry, and it is typically governed by slow interactions with turbulence, and because of which we find that it shows a significant amount of deviation from the steady state flame rate prediction. So the motivation of the current work is to come up with a simple pH evolution model, because pH evolution chemistry is typically very complex and it cannot be incorporated in a DNS study, for example. So our current work is based on previous work done by Johan Swan and Guillaume Blancard, in which they had considered 1D flamelets in order to study pH response to turbulence. In that they had used perturbations in scalar dissipation rate in order to model turbulence. And key observations of the study were that it is important to transport pH because it shows significant deviation from the steady state predictions. And second important fact was that pH chemical time scales are very large, hence they are influenced very strongly by turbulent perturbations. So based on the pH evolution reactions, we can come up with two important lumped reactions, one which represents the pH formation reaction and the other one is the one which represents pH consumption reaction. In these R1, P1, R2, P2, P3, all these are smaller chemical species which have small chemical time scales, whereas AN and AN-1 are pH which are larger molecules and which have larger chemical time scales. So by lumping the pH reactions in such a way, we find that the rate of pH production and consumption is governed by the mass fractions of pH itself. Based on this, we can write the source terms of pH in a linear model as shown. So this model was predicted based on steady state 1D flamelet data, and the aim of the current work is to validate this 1D flamelet pH model for 3D realistic turbulence. So for this we have used an ethylene planar jet, and these diagrams show the evolution of mixture fraction in the domain. As discussed before, pH has very large chemical time scales, because of which it shows a significant scatter around the mean steady state flamelet data prediction, whereas smaller chemical species do not show such a large amount of variation around the steady state flamelet data. So these are joint PDFs of the DNS data around the mean predicted by the flamelet solutions. So these diagrams show joint PDFs of source terms of pH production with respect to mass fraction of pH and consumption of pH with respect to mass fraction of pH, and the white lines show the steady state flamelet data prediction as given by the model. So as we can see, in the mean sense, the DNS data follows the model prediction very closely. However, there is a large amount of scatter, due to which in the future work we are aiming to incorporate the actual model into a DNS study, and we would like to observe how the model predicts the pH evolution with respect to the full chemistry prediction.
I am Ashwati K. Raghu. I am a PhD student at IIT Madras. We will be presenting on catalytically stabilized combustion and thermal integration in catalytic microreactor. So we are interested, our group is interested in fuel processing in small scale reactors. So by fuel processing we mean production of FT Fischer-Tropsch fuel, olefin or hydrogen by processing hydrocarbons, smaller hydrocarbons. So microreactors are very small reactors of orders of characteristic length in micrometer range. So they behave quite different from normal reactors. They have very high surface to volume ratios and they have very high fast rates of heat and mass transfer. So our challenges include stability of combustion in these small channels, because combustion quenching can take place in such small channel sizes. So we are looking at catalytic combustion, catalytically stabilizing the combustion process, and then we are also looking at thermal integration of microreactors because of the high rates of heat transfer. It can be used for thermally integrating the reactors. So in this is a already published result of our group. This is reforming and propane combustion integrated in a cross flow system. So already counter current and co-current systems were looked at by other people. So our group was looking at cross flow reaction of propane and reforming, and then this was found to be quite good at low flow rates of ammonia.
Hello, I am Neha. Now I would be presenting about the instabilities in the combustion. And now as we have known that combustion is very susceptible to instabilities, we are trying to tackle that instability with either with insulating or even with the catalytically stabilized combustion. Now here is an interesting result which is published by Sheshadri and Mr. Kaisere. Here the basic concept is we are using a microreactor which is of length 5 centimeters and the diameter of 1 mm. Here we are doing hydrogen assisted ignition of propane. As soon as the hydrogen is let into the reactor, it converts even less than 5 seconds. But propane combustion takes some time. After some sufficient time scale, when the temperature reaches a good amount for the propane to combust, then only propane starts combustion. So even at 60 seconds, the conversion of propane remains much less than 10%. As the time scale goes on increasing, we can observe that the conversion of propane starts increasing. And we have also studied the effect of insulation on propane combustion. When the walls are insulated, like we went on varying the thermal conductivity of the wall. When the wall thermal conductivity is only 1, means it is well insulated, the conversion is found to be very high. It reaches 100% conversion within a very fast time, because all the heat is well entrapped within the microreactor. When the thermal conductivity is increased, that means when the walls are conducting high, then it is taking much more time to convert. And our future work is going to be on, we would be working on new heat recuperating system where the excess enthalpy of the combustion is reused within the microreactor to heat the cold feed. And for this we are comparing the U-bend and the Swiss roll geometries. And I would be working on catalytically stabilized combustion of biofuels. The effect of catalyst and the interaction of the homogeneous and heterogeneous reactions has been studied here. And then Ashwati is going to work on thermal coupling of microreactors for higher hydrocarbons. Here we are coupling an exothermic and endothermic reaction. Steam reforming is an endothermic, whereas the combustion is an exothermic reaction. So we can use the heat of combustion for either steam reforming reaction or Fischer-Tropsch or even Sabatier-Senden reaction. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Shantanu Pramanik and I am a PhD student in Combustion and Spray Lab, Mechanical Engineering Department, Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. So my topic of study is mild combustion of syngas. Just some background. Mild combustion is a relatively new technology which promises low NOx, CO and hydrocarbon emissions, and it has two attributes. It requires highly preheated reactants and also high inlet velocities. And it is said that the reaction zone in mild combustion is highly distributed. But in the literature there are various similar technologies which are like mild combustion, like high temperature air combustion known as HITAC or flameless oxidation or FLOX. So we want to do a fundamental study and look into the reaction zone and understand how all these merge together and is it really a distributed combustion or not. So to this end we have developed an experimental setup with optical axis. It is a cylindrical reverse flow combustor. We have the arrangement of both non-premixed, premixed and partially premixed reactants. We feed the reactants and reactants through mass flow controllers, and we use heater which is PID controlled to preheat the incoming oxidizer. So this is an image of our experimental setup. Here we are presenting two results. So initially we are increasing the reactant fuel flow rate and we see that the flame transfers from a shear layer stabilized flame to a closely distributed flame, and the flame length increases as the flow rate increases. There is a necking structure observed in this region due to the entrainment of the reactants. So when we have compared that with the CO2 star chemiluminescence from simulations, we find a close match between the two. But as you can see, when we do simulations of OH contours, we find that the reaction zone is highly distributed. So to closely mimic mild combustion, we then decrease the oxygen percentage in air and we add nitrogen to decrease that. So we see that the flame length increases and it is on the verge of lift-off compared to the 21% oxygen case. And if you see that the flame dimensions are different, this is a more distributed flame. Also the reaction zone dimensions are higher. So we conclude that with increase in dilution, we'll be able to achieve mild combustion and do fundamental laser diagnostic studies in this setup. And the techniques that we'll be employing is OH star chemiluminescence, OH PLIF and exhaust measurements. Thank you.
I am Sendil Kumar from Thermodynamics and Combustion Engineering Laboratory, IIT Madras. I have studied the effect of free stream turbulence on N-heptane isolated droplet. For creating a turbulent flow field, I have used grids of different dimensions, and I used a quartz suspender to suspend the droplet. So I quantified the whole turbulence flow field using a two-dimensional hot wire anemometer, and I have maintained the scales and the mean velocity constant. The mean velocity was maintained at 0.4 meter per second, and 2.7 mm of a droplet can be suspended using the suspender, and the suspender is put at different locations of the flow field, and the interaction between the scales, interaction between the turbulence and the droplet is being analyzed. You see that when the turbulent intensity increases, the mass burning rate increases, reaches a maximum far beyond 20 mean fluctuation velocity of 20%. You could see that the burning rate comes down. The reason for increment is the increment in the turbulent intensity increases the mass burning rate is because of the transport phenomena. The turbulence enhances mixing, so the mass burning rate increases. But the decrement is because after beyond some values of fluctuations, the flame, the reaction zone, there are reaction zones. The turbulent transport increases such that the heat from the flame is removed, and there is a quenching of the flame, so the reaction rates come down. So when the reaction rates come down, the mass burning rate decreases. After that, there is a dynamic equilibrium between how much amount of fuel is evaporated and burned, so it almost remains constant, though we don't have a sufficient data here to validate. Thank you.
So this is the setup that I am having. I have a spray here and a co-flowing 60-degree flat vane solar is there for solar number 0.961. And basically what I have done is that I have kept for this study I have kept a rigid plate at the bottom, and then I have taken the shadowgraph images of this one, and this is the instantaneous one snapshot or instantaneous image, and then I have fixed several points along the spray cone of this image. But from the average image I have taken those points, and then I have taken how the intensity varies with time. So if you take suppose this point, when a wave passes through this, the intensity comes down. So that variation of intensity is shown in this one. This is just the raw data to show that I have taken for the for a 1 second time period of 1 second. That means like 20,000 points are there, since the framing rate was 20,000 frames per second, and an FFT of that was performed, and from that I got the dominant frequency of this wave was as 67 Hertz. And this was performed for different points along the spray cone, and in all those cases I got the exact dominant frequency was 67 Hertz. And although it was observed that the amplitude of this frequency peak, it kept coming down, that you can see from the wave. Actually here it's the wave is not formed that much, and so that is the amplitude. So in these cases, these two cases, the amplitude amplitude was smaller. And the future plan is that I will excite this particular frequency itself to see how this changes the spray profile, and also plan is there to do a PDPA to find out how the droplet distribution changes when it is excited for different amplitudes and different frequencies. And for these cases I will put a speaker at the bottom. All these are excited in the axial cases.
So here in this work we are trying to understand the local properties on the reactive isoscalar surfaces of a lean hydrogen air mixture. For this we are to study this we are doing a direct numerical simulations along with the flame particle tracking, which is a post-processing technique which has been developed recently. So it's a very novel technique through which you can understand the local properties on the reactive isoscalar surfaces. So first we perform the direct numerical simulations with a detailed chemistry where we resolve the entire flame structure, and so once the entire flame structure is resolved, the DNS data has been saved at a particular time steps, and we post-process this DNS data using the flame particle technique. So in the flame particle technique what we do is we consider the fully resolved flame data, Eulerian flow field data, and we consider a particular scalar isosurface which is within the premixed flame. So say for example here we are considering a temperature isosurface which is of 1000 Kelvin, and we load the surface with a certain number of particles. So these particles are an integral part of the scalar isosurface, and they always stick to the surface and move with the surface. So we track the position of these particles position with time using a triangle ray intersection algorithm. So we interpolate different properties onto these flame particles, and we try to understand how the flame speed evolves with time. So here what we do is, here we are calculating the displacement flame speed for each of the flame particles, and we are trying to understand how does this flame speed is influenced by various parameters. So there are three terms, term 1, term 2, term 3, and the denominator term mod of gravity, which influence the flame speed. So we can see that the flame speed shows here we can see that the red lines are for the displacement flame speed with time is shown here, where the red lines denote the property for individual flame particle, whereas the black line is the ensemble mean. So different terms, we are trying to understand the contribution to the displacement flame speed from the different terms. So these are the variation of the different terms, and finally we try to understand the effect of the flame speed
sensitivity of the flame speed to the stretch. So through this we can see that the flame speed is very less influenced by the tangential straining, whereas the curvature is the most dominant term. And also by studying the different cases, we can see that all the flame speed curves collapse onto a narrow band showing a unified description of the flame speed.
Good afternoon to all. I am Muthu Selvan, working in Combustion Lab, Propulsion Division, NAL. And here this is development of simplex atomizer for combustor applications. We have tested different atomizers and here compiled the performance of it. So this is basically about simplex atomizer. This is a pressure swirl atomizer which is having a tangential port like this, and then the liquid fuel will be enter into this, and then it will have a swirl component inside. Due to this swirl component there will be a radial pressure gradient at the center. To fill this pressure gradient, air goes here and then occupy the center, which forms the air core. So this air core formation is the critical parameter of this atomizer operation. So due to this presence of this air core, this spray is coming as a hollow conical spray. This further interacts with the air and forms the finer droplets. This is the spray, and this is the Malvern spray analyzer. This is the source and receiver of the Malvern spray analyzer, and the spray which we wanted to investigate is introduced between them. And this is the drop size distribution curve at a different injection pressures. When I am increasing this pressure from 2 to 30 bar, the distribution curve shifts towards this side. So this distribution curve is having a droplet diameter in the x-axis and the local volume percentage in the y-axis. As I increasing this injection pressure, the droplet diameter distribution curve shifts this side, which shows the improved atomization quality. In this study, along this center of this spray and at the different axial locations, we have done this measurement and then compared here. And here, this is all the image processing of this cone. So when I am increasing this pressure, this cone angle increases. That was compared here. And here I have taken 4 different atomizers and its spray cone angles also compared. And this is the SMD distribution along the axis of the spray. When the droplets are traveling along the axial direction, which breaks up further and further, which contributes for a smaller droplet. And here it shows the drop size distribution curve. The distribution curve shifts from the left to right, which signifies the improved atomization quality. And these are at a different radial distance. How the distribution curves are changes are explained here. And this is the SMD distribution at a different heights. And here I compared the performance of water and kerosene along the axis of the spray, how the water and kerosenes are changing. Due to this increased kerosene, the droplet diameters are less. And here I compared for different configurations, and finally the configuration which is having lesser K is distributing in a radial higher distance and having lesser SMD. And this is the distribution curve. Thank you. I am Muthu Selvan. I am working in Propulsion Division. This is my colleague Satyamurthy work. Since he was not available, I am presenting his work. So this group is a high-speed combustor group. They are working in the area of experimental investigation of supersonic combustion by using stud cavity combustor. So here this is a stud cavity combustor. This is like a high-speed combustor. When the air is allowed at a higher speed, how to stabilize the flame, and then igniting the mixture and establishing the combustion is the main objective of this work. Here these studs are used to introduce the cavity effect here, and to simulate high speed velocities at the inlet, these plug nozzles are used, which allows the flow at a supersonic condition, and this cavity is aerodynamically stabilizing this flame. And this is the rig which we used in our laboratory, and the compressed air is coming here and then which simulates the inlet conditions of it. And by using a wall static probe, shown here, we measured the static pressures and characterizing this cavity. And this is the hot flow rig which is having a preheater 1 and 2 to simulate a higher temperatures in the actual conditions, which is 1500 Kelvin. By using these preheaters, these temperatures has been simulated, and by using a supersonic flow, these higher Mach numbers were simulated, which was shown here. And in a cold flow oscillations, the different cavity of this L by D has been simulated, and this pressure oscillations has been measured, and the final geometry of this has been chosen for a hot flow condition. And here it shows the hot flow. These are at a higher temperature, which shows the inlet temperature, and the mass flow. When we are igniting this mixture, the static pressure rises actually in a constant area depth in a supersonic flow. When we add the heat, which increases the pressure, which signifies the combustion. Same thing has been tested here for different equivalence ratios. When we are going for higher equivalence ratio, the higher wall static pressure has been observed along the length of the cavity, which shows the successful ignition and combustion of the supersonic combustor. And for a higher repeatability, these results may be compared. Thank you.
So I'm investigating the effect of non-perfect boundary conditions on the bistable zone in thermoacoustic interaction. I'm a student from IIT Kanpur. My name is Balasundram. I'm working under the supervision of Dr. Satish Mariappan. So this is a typical rich K tube. It is used to study the thermoacoustics in typical combustors. So I'm using a heater gauge to represent the heat source, and basically I'm using a flame describing function to describe the dynamics of the system, and this is the governing term which governs the pressure fluctuation term, which governs the region 1. The properties are constant, and the region 2 properties are constant. This direct delta function approximates the heat release, the heater gas. So using this transfer function, I am calculating, representing gain and phase as a function of amplitude and frequency. So this shows that in the linear regime of oscillation, you have a single peak, forcing frequency, you are getting a maximum response, and also this non-linear regime, you are having a higher harmonics present, but since it is relatively low compared to a fundamental forcing frequency response. And using the pressure, continuity of pressure and velocity jump condition, I am solving this equation, and using impedance boundary condition, I am calculating this, and then the resulting dispersion relation looks like this. So what is the the new thing in this experiment, the computation, is that most of the people used to consider this pressure fluctuation as 0 while solving this equation, but I am using this impedance boundary condition in order to solve. So the resulting dispersion relation, I replace this with this, and then this with the gain as amplitude and phase as a frequency, and that. So after this, the resulting hysteresis zone seems to be depends on the heat losses associated with this boundary condition, and it is not negligible. It seems relatively up to maximum 30% variation, and the code is validated using this heater location. It shows that the maximum amplitude of oscillation at 0.25 of this duct, the 1/4 of the duct. Thank you.
For high-speed flow simulation, we cannot only consider one-step global chemistry, because that is not accurate enough, and if we consider the detailed chemistry, it is computationally very costly. So it is tried to reduce the mechanism in order to strike a balance between accuracy and computational cost. So for that, there are number of mathematical techniques available for generation of reduced chemical mechanism. They are like partial equilibrium approximation, quasi-steady state approximation, ILDM, computational singular perturbation, directed relation graph, path flux analysis, CARM, etc. I have tried to use joint analysis of sensitivity and reaction rate in order to reduce the mechanism, and for that open source software Cantera was used. For that, initially the sensitivity the analysis was carried out to find out the rate limiting step, and then kinetics analysis to find out the fastest reaction, and then those things are kind of mapped, and from intersection of the fastest reaction and rate limiting reaction, desired reactions were selected, and then for the methane combustion, that was compared for temperature time, then OH radical time profile. However, there are certain gaps. The process is not yet established, and we are working towards it. Once the algorithm is fixed, we will try to couple it with our flow solver. However, we have tried to do the literature survey also to see how people are actually doing. So there are certain software for CARM which people uses for reduction of reaction mechanism, and there are reports that they actually couple it with flow code, and our final aim is to develop something like that, and then to simulate a complete end-to-end scramjet combustor. Thank you.
This poster is about the swell generation of a diesel engine.
Here, for diesel engines, normally for a 4-port configuration or 4-valve configuration, we will have one tangential port as well as one helical port. This design, once it is proved, when the design is proved and we make the curve path for that port, we will take the port for a complete modeling of the port, considering that injector location and the valve locations as well as the bolt locations and all. Once the port is finalized, then we will take it for a CFD analysis. In the CFD analysis, we will come to know about the flow characteristics of the port. The flow characteristics of the port is made studied, and this will be taken for making the flow box. This flow box is be taken for a paddle wheel test rig. It is a steady test rig, steady wheel test rig, and from that the data captured from the paddle wheel, we will take it for making the port cores. This is how the port cores and the cylinder head will be made, and the ports will be finalized.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Pratap. I am assistant professor at the Indian Institute of Space Science and Technology. So today I am going to talk about the research that is going on at IIST. So the one part is that we are working about the laminar burning velocity measurements using some stationary flame methods. So basically this is a flat flame burner which is used for producing a one-dimensional flame. And then, so this is a typical one. We have taken the idea from the Eindhoven University. So this perfectly make a circular planar disc, so that if you measure that unburned gas velocity, it is equivalent to the laminar burning velocity. The second method is that axisymmetric two-dimensional conical flame method. So here, so if we can measure the conical flame using any direct photographies or Schlieren methods, we can get the normal component of that one. So that will be equivalent to the laminar burning velocity. And the second part that we are working into the application point of view is the turbulent swill isothermal flows. So basically we have a swill burner, so with which we can change the axial swillers with the different degrees of swill intensities. So here initially we started without any swill, and then we got the flow fields using a particle image velocimetry. So it is basically a 2D planar imaging velocity field. And then to validate that setup, we have used with a nozzle burner. Yeah, the nozzle burner is taken from here, and then the same thing, identical conditions has been taken from the reacting flow field, and this is a chemiluminescence images. Yeah, thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Bala. I am from IIT Kanpur. I am working on stability analysis of thermoacoustic interactions in gas turbine combustor. This is a system I am studying, thermoacoustic system that I am studying. Here, due to heat release from the vortices, you have pressure fluctuations, which will in turn affect how the vortices are separated and impinging. This system can be modeled using partial differential equations, which in turn can be turned into ordinary differential equations. I go one step further and turn them into difference equations, which are called Poincare map. Here I show the pressure fluctuations for the system for a given set of system parameters.
Okay, 2 minutes, finish.
Okay. And for a given set of system parameters, I can tell whether the system is unstable or stable. As a function of Mach number, I show the heat release rate here, and for given Mach number, below the black line the system is stable, and above that the system is unstable. I compare this with the experimental results. For experiments, we take the Helmholtz number or the dominant frequency, which we get both from the analytical method and the experimental results. We see a qualitative comparison where we can see the transition of the Helmholtz number from the vortex shading frequency to the acoustic frequency. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Alfredo, and I am working in TU München with Professor Wolfgang Polifke. We are working in thermoacoustic instabilities, and we are trying to apply the multiple scales analysis for the problem. Here we have the basic scheme for the problem. It means we have the flame, the acoustic wave, and the reflection. We had also modulation in the air inlet, and it becomes a loop for the problem. So from this basic scheme, we have the piston cylinder system, and we can get two important scales. It means we have the length scale. It is the distance between piston and cylinder, and the second one is the time scales. We have short time scale and long time scale. The first one is for the acoustic wave, and the second one is for the flow. Okay. When we say multiple scales analysis, it means analytic solution, and we hope to compare the results with some CFD techniques. that methodology has been applied before for Professor Chakrabarty, and we have to obtain an analytic expression with analytic asymptotic methods. Okay, we should have a small parameter. In this case, we use the Mach number, which is quite low.
Hi, I'm Aurélien Genot, and I'm starting my PhD, and it's about thermoacoustic instabilities in solid propellant rocket motors. I'm between different institutes, and my supervisor are Thierry Schuller and Stanley Gallier. So we are interested to study the thermoacoustic in this system for the new Ariane 6. We changed the size, so we need to do another study, another acoustic study. We have a coupling between the combustion of the solid propellant and the acoustic in this motor. In the propellant, we have some aluminum particles, and these particles can go out of the solid propellant, and then we have a change. We change the solid particle in droplet, in aluminum droplet, and so the coupling with the acoustic and the flame length can create a perturbed heat release. So we have, for example, a criterion, the Rayleigh criteria, that permits to verify if we are unstable or stable in our system. For example, one of my supervisors, Stanley Gallier, proposed a simulation to compute these criteria in the solid rocket motor. So I will do some low-order methods, analytical methods, and then CFD computations, because DNS of the droplets is quite difficult, and then runs or U-runs of all the systems. And if we find some experimentation, we will validate our techniques, our analytical methods, and CFD computations.
Okay, my name is Akane from University of Tokyo. This is my research topic, research activity in Kaneko-Yamazaki laboratory. This is my research topic. I'm doing some proposals of criterion for prediction of combustion installation considering flexibility. So this is the background and motivation. I'm using this kind of experimental geometry. I got this experimental results. And then we modify the N-term model criteria with on N, which is a constant value in previous research, and we got the modified N model like this. And this is a result of calculation N, and this is a verification of criteria. Here is the experimental results. And this blue point is the constant value from the previous model. In this research, we got the more accurate predicted method in this red point. And so my summary is our criterion proposed in this study can predict the stability limit more accuracy than the predicted model. Our future direction will be development of a new criteria based on both linear, non-linear combustion stability.
My name is Shaiji. My research topic is reacting flow simulation of auxiliary injection in very high area ratio nozzle. So this is a very high area ratio nozzle developed by NASA back in 1987, and the area ratio is around 1000. So theoretically what we expect, the Mach number is 10.3, but practically we are getting 8.3 only here. And right now I am simulating the flow simulation in this particular very high area ratio nozzle, and I have the validation results from the NASA TP, and based on the hydrogen oxide mechanism we are getting around 500 specific impulse, but because of the operation of the nozzle, especially at the sea level conditions, the specific impulse is getting reduced to a lower value because of the side load effects and the separation problems, and this can be somewhat overcome by an auxiliary injection of the same propellants introduced right after the throat, the downstream of the throat, and thereby increasing the thrust and the specific impulse of the rocket nozzle. In addition to that, if we are using methane oxygen reaction or a methane oxygen propellants instead of the hydrogen oxygen propellants, the specific impulse is getting lowered by 335 instead of the 480. That is simply because of the high molecular weight of the methane compared to that of hydrogen. And this can be overcome by the auxiliary injection of the same propellants, the methane and oxygen, and thereby we can improve the specific impulse from 335 to 375 because of the auxiliary injection. In the fluid flow side, we are using the explicit method, and in the reaction side, we are using the implicit method. Together it is known as the point implicit method. And for modeling the hydrogen oxygen reaction, we are using 6 species 8-step hydrogen oxygen chemistry, and for modeling the methane oxygen reaction, we are using 8 species 11-step chemistry. It is known as a Versio mechanism, or otherwise known as the CHO finite rate chemistry model. Thank you.
Hi, I am Balakrishnan. Today I am here to give the poster presentation on flow field study of coaxial flat Van Solar. Actually, usually the coaxial flat Van Solar or coaxial flow usually used for whenever we need to mix two different fluids or liquid. For example, act of combustion, the air and fuel. So this is the present civil configuration. You can see that this is the center hub. Actually, through this flow will be allowed as a free jet. This is the annular passage. Through this, the bed are kept with a record angle. You can see the angle is made with respect to center axis, and inclination made in the clockwise direction. This is called the Van angle. For the present study, the civil number equation is, this is the, with respect to geometrical consideration, we can take the civil number is this is the equation. We know that geometric configuration are the same. We can substitute this value, but only the angle only is varying. For different Van angle, we can get the civil number. The present study just to be taken 10 degree, 30 degree and 50 degree. The corresponding civil number 0.13, 0.43 and 90. And also it is compared with the free jet. I mean there is no civil jet. This is 0. And we can take for the present work two Mach number are considered. There is a 0.85 and one is the 1.83. Just to see the centering pressure measurement. This is for non-swell jet, and this is for swell jet with 10 degree. This is for swell jet with 30, and this is for 50 degree. We can see here increasing civil number, the potential core length are reduced, and also the mixing region, I mean the transition is also very steep for the civil number. So this just explain that increasing civil number increase the entrainment and increase the mixing. So the increasing the angle we can enhance the mixing of the flow fields. This is for supersonic case. The same, when we increase the civil number, the shock strength are reduced. We can see here, this is for 10 degree and this for 30 degree. When compare these two flaps, the shock strength are reduced. You take the 50 degree, the shock strength almost reduced. The corresponding flow field such as this is one, we can see the shock strength are reduced. So increasing the civil number also supersonic, we can reduce the shock strength.
My name is Joel and I work with Professor Satya Chakravarti, and I'm from IIT Madras. My work is about finding the effect of the acoustic coupling terms with the flow in a backward facing step combustor. How I do this is, I have my Navier-Stokes equations which I non-dimensionalize, and then I analyze with the asymptotic methods. I expand my flow variables in terms of orders of Mach number because I'm doing this analysis in the limit of low Mach number. Then I decompose my temporal and spatial derivatives, and my objective is now to recover, or rather to uncover the coupling terms from the acoustics onto the flow. So the acoustics imposes an acceleration term. The acoustics imposes an acceleration term on the flow known as the global acceleration term, because it turns out that in the flow momentum equation, the acoustic pressure is of the same order of magnitude. The acoustic pressure is of the same order of magnitude as the order of magnitude of the rest of the terms in the equation, according to the asymptotic analysis. So upon doing this, having now my flow set of equations with the coupling terms, I would now like to analyze the spatio-temporal instability characteristics, and that is by converting this from time domain to frequency domain, and reducing this into a dispersion relation. And my dispersion relation will have to contain, so this happens to be my dispersion relation, and it will contain the global acceleration term. So this global acceleration term, the effect of this global acceleration term is to be studied. So the omega is the wave number, the omega is the complex frequency, and based on how the group velocity changes with space, based on locations where the group velocity is 0, I have my absolutely and convectively unstable boundaries. So this is my objective, is to plot it in a certain parameter space.
My name is Srivallabha. I will be presenting a part of my work I have done for my PhD on larger simulation of evaporating spray jets. Basically predicting unsteady flows with RANs will place large requirements on the RANs turbulence models. The best approach to simulate flows would be a DNS, but given the current computational limitations, a DNS of realistic flows is very difficult. So LES will offer the right kind of balance between the accuracy required and the computational expense that can be tolerated. Large eddy simulations usually use subgrid scale models like Dynamics-Smakarinsky and Smakarinsky, but the subgrid scale models themselves have a profound effect on the evolution of the dispersed phase, and there have been studies where introduction of various subgrid scale models has altered the flow field qualitatively. So we have simulated the gas phase using what is known as an explicit filtering large eddy simulation. In this method, the Navier-Stokes equations are solved directly, meaning there is no filtering and there are no unresolved components. And once the field is solved directly, we apply a low pass compact filter, which is called as the explicit filter, which will play the role of viscosity in dissipating the energy. So using this explicit filtering, the large eddy simulation method, we have simulated a single phase round jet, and we see that the behavior of the round jet in the similar region matches excellently with the experiments. The inverse center line velocity slope is has a B number of 5.95, where the experimentally measured values are between 5.8 and 6.06. The center line RMS also goes to the experimentally measured values in the self-similar region. So the gas phase code with an explicit filtering LES will predict the experimentally measured values very well. So using this method, we have gone on to simulate multi-phase flows, which is essentially an evaporating spray of acetone. The spray is supposed to be finely atomized and very dilute, and the particles are treated in a Lagrangian approach. We have simulated one experiment of Shen, which is at a Reynolds number of 31,600 with a mass loading of 1%, and then the simulation is done on 2 grids, which are refined from 1.5 million to 6.5 million. We see that even for the particle phase, the models for the particle phase are only 2, the heat transport model and the droplet drag model. Using these 2 simple models, we are able to predict the droplet behavior very well, even which is studied in the experiments. You see that in the self-similar region, the center line velocity decay matches very well with the experiment, and even the fluctuating quantities are predicted very well. The self-similar profiles of the gas phase mean and RMS are also seen to be very well. So in this work, we have presented a method where there is no modeling in the gas phase, and the droplet phase is very minimal modeling, and even with that we are able to predict the experimental predictions very well. This shows that without modeling itself we are able to predict many properties, and from here we need to add only a minimal model to predict other phenomena which might not be resolved on the grid. Thank you.
This is the work done by acoustic oscillations, induced shear layer oscillations in the axisymmetric V cavity. The main thing focused here is these axisymmetric V cavities are here in the solid rocket motors, where you need the maximum increase in the burn area. So these axisymmetric cavities will help in increasing the burn area, and it will decrease the burn time of the rocket motors. What I am doing is a cold flow simulation of cold flow experimental studies for these axisymmetric cavities to decide width of the cavity, height of the cavity, and distance between the cavity and shape of the cavity. These results will help in designing the cavity in the solid rocket motors for the future advanced rocket motors. The oscillations, from the experimental results, we find that for certain length and certain width of the cavity and for the shape of the cavity, oscillations varies. At the same time, when the 2 cavities are nearby, the oscillations increases. This is the conclusion of the complete experiments what I done it. And these experiments will, what we done especially in these studies is we azimuthally all along r theta coordinates, we had 16 sensors where the azimuthal wobbling of vortices were first time reported in the studies, and these are measured by the 16 sensors with the acoustic sensors. So now we can see when the 2 cavities are nearby, the oscillations are increasing, and this is the azimuthal wobbling of this pressure oscillations measured, and this is the entire experimental setup, and this is the sensor, 16 sensors measured azimuthally. Thank you.